Hey, thinkers. So, I was going around on my YouTube feed and I thought of something. What's the difference between volts, amps, and watts? I always use those things interchangeably, but usually I use volts. So, I searched it up and I found a really good video by, I think it was Quick Techie, or yeah, it was Tech Quickie. And they were talking about how electricity has different terms that are a lot of times used interchangeably, and really um, they explained it in a really well manner. They used water as an example, and that got me thinking about electrocution. The first electrocution, for death penalty, it says here the first the first execution by electric chair um, was on William Kemmler, and it was on August 6th, 1890. So 1890. Electrocution has been on for a long time, and it's still here today. But I said that because when I watched that video, that reminded me of, I asked my dad when I was 7 years old, I said, why don't those birds on the power lines get electrocuted? And that is a big, I searched that up actually, and that's actually a pretty big thing. Let's see, I see here, like the first, like there are, it says here there are 5,270,000 results in little over half a second on Google. That searched up birds don't complete the power line circuit. That's exactly the answer. If you don't complete a power line circuit, you can't get electrocuted, and that's really interesting about electricity. So the basic answer for this is electricity likes to go to the path of least resistance, and that's not always the case, because the electricity the current does go into the bird. It does, a very small amount, but it does matter. It's enough to kill the bird, but there's one point that needs to be understood. Like you can see here, a lot of people are confused. They think, okay, it's going through the wire, so why doesn't it go up the bird's foot or leg into the bird's body? Well, like you can see here, that's the reason why. The electric current flows, it flows through. The electrons move one way through the wire. So there's no going back, there's no going in any other direction than whatever direction the electrons are moving in. To complete a circuit, you need a pathway. You need a complete circuit. You need a path all around from the negative end to the positive end, all the way around. So if you don't complete that circuit, you don't get electrocuted. If I touch negative and positive, if you ever notice, if you play with any wires, you can see how the wire heats up if you touch negative and positive together on the battery. It actually heats up. Sometimes it'll start to smoke. If you read on the battery label, it even says do not short circuit. Do not short circuit, which basically means a short circuit is when electrons flow from one side to the next. There's no job getting done. Electricity, negative and positive, always connects. But if it's a completed circuit, then that energy is released through a different way. For example, when you're spinning a motor, if you're hooking up a motor to a battery, there's always this loop, electrical energy going and converting into kinetic energy. It's rotating. But for the birds, back to the birds, they aren't completing the circuit, the cycle. Electricity, if it connects negative and positive, that's a short circuit. You get heated up, you get electrocuted. But if you are standing on the ground and you touch a power line, you're completing the circuit, because ground would be considered the end where electrons are trying to flow through, and the wire is where electrons are trying to come in from. And now you've completed the circuit. You have ground, and you have the electrons where they are, the wire, and you're in between. You're sandwiched in between, and you've completed the circuit. Now, the positive end. First off, a lot of people get this confused. They think electrons flow from the positive to the negative. It's actually the other way. Electrons flow from the negative end to the positive end. That's a dumb way of naming it, but that's how it is. So the electrons are flowing from negative to positive. So when you're in the middle, you're completing that circuit, because people always think, okay, it's electricity is flowing from positive and it's flowing from negative. There's positive electrons and negative electrons. When they connect, they heat up. But that's not true. It's actually flowing from negative all the way to positive and completing the circuit. Like this, you can see here how it's completing the circuit. So, you can't say for the birds, they aren't a single line. Again, they're in a single line. Electrons flow from one way to the next and nowhere else. They flow from left to right or right to left. They're not going from negative to positive. It's just a wire. So if you sit from on one wire, nothing's happening. But if you connect to another wire, anything else, then you've now completed the circuit, and you're the thing that's sandwiched in between. And a lot of the times this happens. Birds actually do get electrocuted and die. I'm gonna point here, but I'm not sure if I can find a picture. But yeah, maybe, I don't know. There's a picture here. Maybe, I don't know. But so that's a lot of the times people get that confused. And electrocution is basically when, what's it called? Two terminals. That's the word I'm looking for. Two terminals when they connect. The thing is, your body always has a little bit of moisture on its skin. Because you have so many pores on your skin, all over your body, there's very little moisture. All those sweat glands, they have very little moisture. And that's where electricity can seep in and go to your internal organs, connecting negative and positive, and now you have an electric shock. My computer's overheating, I think. So, there's this incredible man who does not have sweat glands. That's right. He does not have sweat glands, and therefore he can't be electrocuted. I'm not sure if I can find a picture of him powering a light bulb with his tongue, but I'm gonna point here. He can basically let electricity pass over him, not through him. Because of the fact he has no sweat glands, electricity can't go inside of him, and I think that's the reason why he looks like that. He looks a little weird, but it's still pretty cool. I'd love to have that power. He's like this electric man, which is pretty amazing. The fact that the electrons flow over him and not inside of him is actually a well documented electronic phenomenon, where electricity passes the path of least resistance, where my body resists flowing. My body resists letting electricity flow through it way more than any metal does, which basically means how, I don't know if I can find a picture, but over here, where electricity flows over the body, or the path of least resistance, which is the metal suit. So this is actually what people use when they're in a high voltage environment, where the electricity will basically flow over them and not inside of them. Which means if you're outside in a thunderstorm and there's lots of lightning, it's actually a misconception that metals attract lightning. That is not true at all. Metal does not attract lightning. If there's a lot of lightning, the best thing you can do is grab as much metal as possible and put it all around your body, which means that you are like an insulator. You're like rubber, and and the only thing that'll happen is the electricity will flow through the path of least resistance, which is a well conductor, which is metal, and which will complete the circuit without you sandwiched in between, because it'll go through the metal. Lightning strikes basically because it has a pathway. There's a lot of electrons moving in the air, and when it finds a pathway to the ground, that's a complete circuit. The electrons flow from the sky all the way to the ground, and that flow is perfect for things with high points. Like if something is very high in the sky, like I said, electricity follows the path of least resistance. So there's a tower pointing in the sky. It has a much higher chance to be struck by lightning, because it's really easy for the electrons to just flow down to this point of the top of a skyscraper, suppose, other than to go down to the ground and strike a person. So basically it'll follow the path of least resistance. Just like if you put a lot of metal around you, it will follow the path of least resistance and go through the metal instead of you. Hey guys, I really hope you enjoyed that video. Click here to go to my previous video. Click here to subscribe, and don't forget to keep on thinking. See you later.